Welcome to a new episode of First Sip, Then SAP, the Amista podcast, where we dive into the fascinating world of SAP. In this series, we'll explore the latest innovations, answer common questions from our client, so you'll have the answers too, and share real use cases that bring SAP to life. But I won't be doing this alone. I'll be joined by colleagues, clients, and industry experts to bring you valuable insights. In today's episode, we're diving into the world of scale-ups. What challenges do they face? How can an ERP system help them navigate these challenges? And why is SAP S/4HANA Public Cloud Edition the ideal solution? Of course, we also have a special prize for our listeners, so stay tuned. My name is Coen Sanderink, Business Development Manager at Amista and your host for today. So let's take a sip and then get started. Today, my colleague, Michael Hossain, is joining me. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It's your first one.
Yes, my first one.
Nervous?
Indeed. A bit, yeah. I'm not used to having so much cameras in front of me.
No, cameras and a microphone.
And a mic, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just conversation with somebody else. So dive into it. Forget everything around us and focus on the conversation. So introduce yourself.
Well, I've been working in the SAP world for about 15 years now. During these 15 years, I've actually mostly worked as a consultant, a functional consultant, and worked on different solutions of SAP. So in the beginning of my career, it was mostly related to the CRM solutions of SAP. Also moved to the cloud solutions, so the CX suite of SAP, which is all the CRM-related applications, but also got involved more and more into the ERP side of things. So my initial experiences were on ECC, which was still an on-premise solution. But of course, the last couple of years, S4 has started to emerge. And now I'm really focusing on S4 public cloud. So my role at Amista is I'm leading the S4 team as a business unit manager. And that's about it.
That's about it. And during the preparation, I had some problems with your name. So it's Michael.
Yes.
No, Michael?
It's actually Michael, but as I'm a French native Belgian, actually we say Michael. In Dutch we say Michael.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm allowed to say Michael.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's great. Today, about scale-ups, I'm really excited for the subject because I had a startup myself years ago, so I know a little bit what it is. I also worked a lot with startup from an investor perspective, so I'm really interested in the subject. So I'm really happy to see that.
And we are also a scale-up at Amista, so
that's a really good point.
We are today with 250 employees, but we started with one, of course, a couple of years back. So
and we grew very
fast,
quickly by taking over other companies. We also have an investor behind. We also implemented S4 ourselves, so we know a little bit where we talk about. But define what a scale-up is, because there are a lot of different definitions. It was also kind of hype a few years ago. Everybody was certainly a scale-up if you have more than 5% growth, let's say. But what do we understand in a scale-up?
Yeah. We see scale-ups as companies which are experiencing fast growth on multiple levels in terms of the employees they have, in terms of the revenue they're making, in terms of the different markets they are active in, but also possibly in terms of a geographical perspective. So companies which are growing to different countries and also are involved in possibly in mergers and acquisitions through an investor, possibly. Yeah. So we see in a lot of cases that scale-ups have kind of investment company behind them, injecting the capital they need to make more growth.
Yeah.
So those are the companies we're also focusing on today as a scale-up.
Okay, that's clear. But let's first talk about the challenges they have to deal with. From an investment perspective, also from experience. I see well-structured plans when you talk with a scale-up. But you know one thing for sure, that's not going to happen. Unexpected events that occur, maybe some growth that's lacking behind, and you want to know the real numbers. You want to know where you can steer on. You want to know what different scenarios are based on your cash flow, etc., etc. So, in preparing this podcast, we agreed on basically 4 main challenges we see at startup, based on experience, but also on our talks with startup. That's finance, financial, operation, the IT architecture, because you get silos, and the last one, but certainly not the least, is compliance and cybersecurity, basically. So let's start with the first one, financial. What do you see there when you talk with scale-ups?
When you're scaling as a company, in the beginning you're dealing with low volumes, I would say, low volumes of customers, low volumes of vendors. The revenue is also on the lower side, but as you grow, of course, all of that is expanding a lot. And it also means that it becomes more and more difficult to manage all that volume. For example, if you're just looking at your customers and following up on your cash flow and accounts receivable, that's a good example, because cash flow is really crucial as a scale up, as a growing company. So you want to make sure that that is followed up correctly. But that's usually the problem, because as you are getting more and more customers, you don't have a clear view on which revenue you're expecting.
Yeah.
And also you want to make sure that these customers are reminded that they have to pay for it. If you have overdue receivables, you typically in the beginning stages, you have to take your phone, you have to call them, you have to make sure you're always behind it to make sure that they're paying their invoices. So it takes a lot of time and effort to follow on that. But more importantly as well is, if you have an investor behind you, you want to make sure to report the right numbers to that investor. And getting the right numbers is initially time consuming and a lot of times error prone as well, because what are you doing? You're doing it in Excel.
Exactly.
You're building the numbers and a lot of times also manipulating the numbers to make them look better than they possibly actually are.
Yeah, at least you try them, and that's why I'm thinking about. Actually, it's quite recent. An article in a Dutch newspaper about a startup in Amsterdam with millions of startup money, 50, 60 million, and that amount of money. And he made up the numbers, the future prognosis, the forecast. Thank you. He made them up themselves. So, and there was no control whatever. And you really want to prevent that.
Absolutely, and financially, there are also some other things that become important from a reporting to investors, but also the legal reporting you want to do. For example, declaring your taxes, that needs to be done as well according to the regulations of Belgium in our case, or Netherlands. And that's not always easy if you don't have the systems which allow for that.
Yeah, especially, then we're going a little bit into the compliance subject there. Challenge, basically, if you have different entities in different countries and you're growing fast, and you also have the tax regulations in different companies that you have to deal with. That's really a challenge, and your ERP system has to support them, or your system has to support them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but financial compliance is one thing, but you have other types of compliance as well. GDPR, for example.
That's also an interesting one.
It was a hot topic the last couple of years, actually. Still, a lot of companies are still not compliant to that, I would say.
And it's also difficult, what are the exact rules? So if you have a system that can support it. And I'm also thinking about e-invoicing. Peppel, we made an episode of that also. So if you want to know what it is, then please subscribe and listen to the episode. Yeah. But is it also something that...
Absolutely. In Belgium, every company is obliged to... use e-invoicing as of the 1st of January in 26. So you see a lot of ads, you see a lot of advertisements this year of companies offering e-invoicing possibilities. And Mista, of course, is also one of the companies which can support you with those kind of solutions, but having the right system which allows you to do that e-invoicing is very important.
Yeah. And what I'm also thinking is about segregation of duties. So different roles you have. And also the example I mentioned, the CFO or the CEO had actually got right. He was also CFO. He was also the marketing director, and he was also the sales director, basically. So he could make up all the numbers. Segregation of duty, I think, is also important.
Absolutely. As you grow, I think typically we see the management level who wants to have a view on all the organization when it comes to numbers, but the people working in the different departments are not necessarily allowed to share information. I'm thinking about the cost of each consultant, for example, at Amista. That is not something you want to share with everyone, because then you can compare your salary with your colleagues, and can get into heated discussions.
Yeah, but it's easy for the negotiations.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so segregation of duties becomes more and more important as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we discussed financial and we discussed the compliance. Let's go to the operational part of it, because when you grow, I'm still thinking about the example of Jeff Bezos. I don't know if it's true that he was first packing all the books on his knees in his room. Nowadays, Amazon is doing that in a little different way, but the operational scale-up, that's also really a big challenge.
I think it's normal that in the beginning you're trying to do things with the means you have. You usually don't have the financial power to invest in a lot of manpower, and also not in a lot of systems. So you're dealing with what you have. And typically we see Excel popping up a lot in the beginning. So doing a lot in Excel in a manual way. So it takes a lot of time and effort to do those operations on a manual way. You don't have any automation. And that can slow down your growth as well, because the more you grow, of course, you cannot do the same things that you were doing as a startup, being a scale-up company, growing into a much bigger organization. And that's where you want to look at solutions which can help you in automation, for example.
But also AI, I think, that's nowadays very hot. If you're not a startup that is doing AI, then you can use AI in your operations.
Yeah, indeed. So we see a lot of AI being embedded into solutions right now, and we'll get into that a bit later as well, I think, when we deep dive a bit into the capabilities of SAP.
Yeah, and then the last subject is, you already said that you're starting with all kinds of systems, Excel, but maybe also some systems that focus on a thing, the CRM, for example. Then you suddenly have a siloed system and your data is scattered. That's also a challenge.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you want to report on your operations and your system is in different, and your data is in different systems, what do you need to do? You need to extract the data out of the systems. You need to consolidate it to get a clear view. And usually that takes time, but it leads to errors. And you don't have a clear view on what's going on into the company.
And that's also manual. And I think something that you have to be careful for is that you have different systems. You're extracting the data and you're building automations to create a kind of integration. And then you're creating a spaghetti
landscape.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And that's sometimes getting difficult to get out of there, because building it takes time, but getting out of that spaghetti landscape is also difficult. So that's why we also tend to advise scale-up companies to rather early than late look into an ERP system. Because sometimes you might think that the ERP system is oversized for the size of the company, but you have to build a strong foundation which allows you to grow and to build the support in your growth.
Yeah, and you already mentioned it, so an ERP system that can really help them in solving the challenges. So I'm sure that many people who are listening to the podcast work at a scale-up or own a scale-up and thinking, okay, great. I recognize these issues too, and also more issues that we're not discussing, because HR, for example, I can also imagine that you have there some issues. How can digital solutions like an ERP system help, Michael?
Yeah. Well, ERP is just a part of digitalization, of course, and it's a very important part. But the important message is that you have to look at digitalization not only just as the implementation of one or multiple IT systems, but you really need to look at embedding technology from a strategic point of view towards the future, and ERP can be one of the backbones for that. So how I see it is that the ERP is a bit becomes the brain or the central nervous system of your organization, linking all of the company together, your different departments. It can be finance, sales, procurement, and others.
Logistics, warehousing.
Of course, if you're looking at extensively, HR as well, for example. But getting all of that into one unified systems gives you a lot of much more power in terms of looking at the data in a real-time way, but also to make better decisions and faster decisions. Because the data is there in one system. You don't need to spend time to reconciliate all the data coming out of different siloed
and
systems.
You can focus on growth.
Yes.
Not on...
You're winning time.
Yeah.
You have better insights, and basically you can also make the decisions for your growth.
Yeah, and not on taping your company together.
Yeah. Indeed.
Okay. Nowadays, it's cloud everywhere, but you also still have on-premise systems.
Yeah.
What do you advise for a startup?
Yeah.
And why?
Well, I think in general, in most industries, cloud is allowed, I would say. You still have some specific industries where cloud is a bit difficult. Looking at, for example, maybe defense industries where it might be a difficulty. But in general, I think for the type of scale-ups that we work with, a cloud is very favorable. Why? Because basically in cloud, most of the management of the solution is done by the vendor. Right, so you don't have to invest in infrastructure. You don't have to take care of hardware. You don't have to look at upgrades of your system. This is all managed by the vendor, and also from a cost perspective, it's usually subscription based. So you're just spreading the cost of your licenses over the period of the use.
And you don't have to buy all licenses in one for 5
Indeed.
years, 5-year period, and buy maintenance fees, but each month you...
And they're also, because those systems usually offer the right scaling capabilities. So if you have you start with 10 users or 15 users, and as you grow, then of course you will pay more subscription based, but that is the cost is also growing as you're growing as a company. But that allows you to start small and then to grow together with the company and
but
the
also
organization.
if you scale from a geographic perspective, so to different countries, then cloud might also be...
Absolutely, because cloud is usually it's hosted somewhere over the world, and is basically available everywhere. Depending of course on the vendors, but SAP, for example, is very strong in supporting multitude of countries all over the world with local regulations and compliance and so on. So if you're a scale-up that is expanding into new geographies, then you have the system is ready.
Exactly.
And you basically don't have to reinvest into...
Exactly. And if you look to the automation and AI subject, we already discussed a little bit. Can you give some cases where an ERP system can help you?
Of course, there's... I think in general, AI is a hot topic, like you said, and that means most of the vendors are dealing with AI in some kind of way. So in ERP, for example, you have a whole lot of AI capabilities which are there from the start. Like one of those is a chatbot called Joule. Joule is the name of the chatbot. And this chatbot allows any user to just have a conversation with the system. So basically you can ask questions or give tasks in a natural language, and the system will, the chatbot will execute those tasks for you. So leading into major efficiency gains.
And it's also more easier to use, I think.
Absolutely. If you're new to the system, then you
so
basically don't need
to speed.
The onboarding becomes much more easy.
That's also. We also have a separate episode about AI, also recently recorded. So subscribe, and then you can also listen to that episode. It's really worthwhile. Then the last one. Now, one thing about automation I'm still thinking about is, for example, the invoicing process. Because one of the things I hope that also increases is the invoicing that you send, or the subscriptions you have to manage. That can also be automated. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Automation is of course a big strength of the ERP system. Dealing with thousands of invoices per month instead of 50 or 100 is of course you need automation for that. Yeah, you don't have any company who is doing that manually, hopefully. So the system will really, look at all the transactions which needs to be invoiced and do that in an automated way.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. The last, cybersecurity and compliance. We already discussed that a little bit. That is also really important from a compliance perspective. That you have segregation of duty. That you are sure that the numbers are the numbers. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
Elaborate a little bit on that from the perspective of an ERP system.
Some other examples might be just logging into the system. You want to have the right security measures.
Yeah.
You still see typically a lot of companies just using a user and password without any rules about how the password should be set up. But now more and more we have the multi-factor authentication, so you really have a clear security there of who is accessing the system, and that is embedded into those solutions. Another example could be the ability to do audit trails. Right. Yeah. So you want to have a view on what happens in the system,
and who does what.
Exactly, who does what, and from a traceability point of view, but also from a reporting point of view. If you have an audit by an audit company, then you want to have the tools to easily, I would say, report the data to the audit.
Now we have addressed the challenges, how an ERP system can help addressing those challenges. We already mentioned it a few times, S4, HANA, public cloud. But why is that a good choice for a startup?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's SAP. And for those who don't know SAP has been the leader on the ERP market for more than 50 years. I mean, that's their core of their business is building strong ERP solutions. And over those 50 years, they have gained a lot of experience in different industries, which also means that the solution becomes richer and richer, but also more focused on specific needs of the market. And if you look at the public cloud, it is very much tailored to growing companies. It's really built for scalability.
Yeah.
And that becomes ideal for a scale-up company.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that to mention that SAP is not only for big companies. Of course, it can serve big companies, but also you can start really small with it at a very affordable price, even for a scale-up. But also in terms of monthly subscription fees, but also in terms of implementation fees.
Yeah, that's why we said earlier that we are tending to advise to look at ERP and S4 from an earlier stage, because it can help you to grow from a small company to a mid-sized company to a large company, and potentially even a multinational, all on the same stack, on the same backbone.
Exactly, and that's also one of the reasons why we choose for S4.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have grown a lot in the last couple of years, but our ambitions is to grow much bigger as well. And now we have invested in that system, which is already covering 7 entities, 5 countries, and a multitude of business processes. Yeah. But we are looking at different businesses as well and new models. So, but there we already have the security that the system will be able to cope with that. To cope with that,
yeah, of course. And of course, SAP has other line of businesses like HR and warehousing, and all. You can also use that.
Yeah.
But are you mandatory to use that, or can you also choose for other solutions?
Yeah. Yeah, so of course
it's open. Is it open or not?
It's open. So the system comes with a lot of integration possibilities. It has APIs for everything. So, which means that certain companies will choose to go for a very specific solution, maybe a best of breed solution for let's say warehousing. They will choose to use an external warehouse management system and integrate it with S4. So that's perfectly possible as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's very good. Okay, so. Then I know how S4 is the best choice, but then I'm running a startup. I have to grow. I don't have time to implement it. So, what to do?
Well, you call a Mista, of course.
Yeah, it's a joke about the A team, eh? So there we are.
Of course, we come to the rescue.
Yeah.
No, but
and why?
Well, I think so we've been an ERP implementator for quite a long time, and of course, being a scale up ourselves, we have that in our DNA as well. Mm-hmm. So, like we said earlier, we have if you look at the history of Amista, we have gone through several acquisitions and mergers. We have, since a couple of years, we also have an investor behind us. So we really know what it means to bring together companies into one organization, each company having their own systems, own way of working, a lot of misalignments between the different entities. So that is really something crucial to win time in the growth. And you want to make sure that it's all aligned, and the ERP implementation has helped us to do that. So that means, from an own experience, first of all, we know what scale-ups go through. But also, if you look at our customer base, we have more than 400 SME customers in different industries. I think wholesale, manufacturing, for example, are typical industries where we're active in. And we have helped a lot of those companies grow as a mid-sized, fast-growing company.
So a lot of process knowledge, also a lot of knowledge about the best practices. So we can also advise scale-ups how to best form their processes based on what's the industry best practice. Indeed. And also SAP is based on industry best practices.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
And another reason maybe for, I think one of our strengths is that we take innovation very... we spend a lot of time and effort, and innovation is always on the top of our head, at the top of our mind. So in everything we do, also in the ERP implementation, we always try to look at it from the innovative side. So there we help companies and we collaborate with them to look on how innovation can help them to gain in operational efficiency, to gain maybe even a competitive advantage in the market.
Okay, so if you also want to tell somebody else, then in the link we have, of in the show notes, we have a link. That's what I wanted to say, to our website, and there you can also download the brochure, in which we have all this information in two pages. It's actually very, very handy. Okay, anything else to add? Otherwise, we're almost at the end.
I think just one last topic, which is probably very important for scale-ups and something we offer. We talked about cash flow and how cash flow is important for scale-ups. I think there it's important, if you're going for an ERP system, that you don't have to splash a lot of cash at once. And that's why we're also trying to help scale-ups. So if we're going to do an implementation, we always offer flexible financing options.
That's very interesting.
Depending on their needs, on their situation, they can choose for a CapEx investment, so all paying the implementation at once. Licenses, of course, are always OpEx, but if needed, we can also choose to spread the cost of the implementation over a longer period. So that is certainly something that will sound interesting for scale-ups.
I think that's a very good ending. So we discussed the challenges of scale-ups, the solution directions, why S4 is an interesting choice, how we can help them, also based on our own experience. So if you're triggered, then you can always contact me or Michael, and all our details are also in the show notes. Then there's only one thing left, basically. And that's
the price.
That's where everybody was listening till the end, if they didn't skip the rest of the podcast. That's the price. So, I do the drum. The prize is...
a quick scan.
Okay.
Yeah, so what is a quick scan? So we basically want to go and have a talk with you as a scale-up, and we want to look at how you are dealing with those challenges and which challenges you have, but more importantly, how we can help you solve them. And so basically that's the price, and to embark in a journey together.
Okay, great. So if you're interested and you want to have the quick scan, then you can mail to podcast@amista.com your name, a short motivation, and then we pick a winner each month. And of course, if you listen to the podcast within a few months, there's no issue. We will do that for a period of roughly 1 year. So once again, do not forget to subscribe. We hope to welcome you as a listener in another podcast, and we're at the end. So thank you for listening, and it's time for a sip, and then we can continue with SAP. So thank you.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.